Hey guys, Hatter here. I just wanted to quickly jump in and let you guys know that our mini episodes are going to be moving to early morning on Thursday. So you're not going to lose any episodes. We're just slightly shifting the time to make a better balance between things. Anyways, thank you for listening and we hope you enjoy. Keep investigating. American historical memory often presents slavery through statistics, legislation, and political conflict. Missing from many narratives are the lived experiences of enslaved people and the organized resistance that repeatedly challenged slavery's existence. The German Coast Uprising of January 1811 forced that confrontation, beginning on the plantation of Manuel Andre near present-day Laplace, Louisiana. Enslaved men attacked plantation leadership and began marching towards New Orleans. Numbers grew as they moved from plantation to plantation. Historical estimates vary, placing participation between approximately 200 to 500 individuals. The revolt remains the largest slave uprising in United States history, yet many Americans know little about it. There was no famous speech, no preserved manifesto, no national memorial immediately followed. Instead, there were executions, decapitations, and displayed heads and silence. I am your host, Hatter, along with
Scoot,
and welcome to Investigation. Today I'm going to talk about the German Coast Uprising of January 1811. Now, this stands as one of the largest and least discussed acts of an organized resistance in early United States history. It took place along the Mississippi River plantations north of New Orleans, in the territory of Orleans. The revolt involved hundreds of enslaved men who rose against one of the most brutal labor systems in North America, the Louisiana sugar slavery. Now, the resistance was led primarily by Charles Deslon, and the uprising moved from plantation to plantation while growing in size as participants marched towards New Orleans. Despite its scale, the uprising was violently suppressed in these days. Militias, planters, which are the term for, like, the people who ran the plantations, they would just call them planters.
Mm-hmm.
And territorial troops hunted participants across plantations and swamps, and executions followed. Bodies were mutilated and heads placed on poles along the river road as warnings to the enslaved population.
Did you just say heads on poles?
I did.
So we're getting into some, Dracula, on a pike type deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. If you couldn't tell, this is a dark history episode.
Ah, dark history, you say?
Wow, didn't see that coming.
Didn't see that one coming.
To start, we are going to dive a little bit into the historical conditions that created the uprising, including the rise of Louisiana's sugar economy, the extreme labor demands placed upon enslaved workers, and even the influence of is it Caribbean or Caribbean?
I think it's Caribbean.
I feel like it's one of those words like caramel or caramel. Because I'll say, Pirates of the Caribbean.
I think technically that movie is called Pirates of the Caribbean, but I think in terms of...
It's Caribbean?
Caribbean, I think.
Okay. Well, the influence of Caribbean revolutions, particularly in Haiti, and the political climate following the Louisiana Purchase. If it's Caribbean or Caribbean, tell us in the comments. I said both. I say it depending on, like caramel. I'll be like, can I get a caramel macchiato? But then there's also times, if I'm talking about the Sleep Token song, Caramel, I say caramel. I don't know. I think it's also because he's like, stick to me like caramel.
Well, to be fair, when you're singing a song,
right,
caramel, it just
weird.
It just
he's
does
also
not,
British.
Yes.
So, anyways, there's our little lighthearted segment. Is arguing about the pronunciation of Caribbean because, like I said, it's a dark history episode, so it gets dark really fast.
I'm
And
still salty over Sigourney.
Sigourney.
I'm still salty
Oh
about
yeah,
Sigourney.
I think I ended up cutting that
Did
out.
you cut that out?
But yeah, what did she say it was?
Sigourney.
Right, and what is it actually?
Sigourney.
Sigourney, right. And then, Cass ended up messing me up because then I went to say her name and I said it like she said it, and I was like, what is happening? Anyways, the German Coast Uprising was not an isolated event, but it was the result of systematic violence. The revolt emerged from generations of forced labor, physical punishment, family separation, and economic exploitation. Understanding the uprising requires confronting the brutality of slavery itself and recognizing the agency of those who resisted it. Now, I am going to talk about this and I'm going to be blunt and I'm just going to say it like it is because I have no desire to make the shitty things that happened in the past more palatable for people. Like, you know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So if I come across just like a little bit callous around the situation, it's not. But the fact of it is, this shit happened to people.
It happened.
It happened. And so I don't want people to be like, oh my God, she's not sensitive about it. And it's like, why would I just sugarcoat things? Which was a really bad use of that word because we're talking about the sugar plantations.
I was getting ready to
say,
you might want to change your terminology because that wasn't it.
That wasn't it. That was bad.
Unintentionally.
But there's also a difference between being sensitive and kind of downplaying what actually happened.
There you go.
The uprising occurred at a moment when Louisiana was changing rapidly. The Louisiana Purchase had transferred control from France to the United States only 8 years earlier. Sugar production was expanding, wealth was increasing, and demand for enslaved labor exploded. The entire regional economy became dependent on human bondage. The German Coast Uprising represented far more than just a local rebellion. It was an organized challenge to slavery, plantation capitalism, and white authority in the American South. To understand the uprising, we have to understand Louisiana itself. Louisiana differed dramatically from many regions of the early United States because the territory had passed through multiple colonial powers. It started with the French rule beginning in 1699, went to Spanish administration around 1762, returned back to France for a brief period, and then eventually was sold to the United States in 1803. Now, each of these transitions altered the region, but retained slavery as an economic foundation. The Mississippi River corridor north of New Orleans became one of the wealthiest agricultural zones in North America. The German Coast region derived its name from the German settlers who arrived during the early French colonial period. And by the early 19th century, however, plantations increasingly dominated the landscape, and sugar transformed everything. Historian John Burnside and other contemporary observers noted that sugar production generated extraordinary profits. Plantation owners invested heavily in mills, enslaved labor, and land acquisition, but sugar demanded immense labor. Unlike cotton, sugar cultivation required nearly continuous work cycles. Fields had to be planted, maintained, harvested, transported, crushed, boiled, refined, and processed quickly, and delays meant a loss. Profit depended entirely upon speed. Speed depended upon labor. Labor meant slavery. The population patterns terrified the white elites because enslaved people often outnumbered whites in the plantation districts. You look like you're zoning out, girl.
Oh, crap. Sorry, I did zone out for a second. I'm so sorry.
I was like, nothing?
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know. Like that last solid minute, I don't know. My brain just went. Do you mind repeat your last sentence for me? I am so sorry. That never happens. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So, population patterns terrified the white elites because enslaved people often outnumbered whites in the plantation districts.
Okay, that's the part I missed.
I gotcha.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know why my brain just...
I looked over, I was like, she did not catch a single word of that.
No, my brain, I don't know. My brain just I don't know if I restarted something. I just
You buffered for a minute. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. That's pretty crazy, though.
But that was actually really common for anywhere that had like enslaved African Americans or just people of color in general.
Yeah.
Actually, the Haitian Revolution itself went through the same thing, basically. So
Okay.
now the Haitian Revolution had recently demonstrated what could happen when enslaved population organized the resistance. Before Haiti existed, it was a French colony of Saint Domingue on the western half of Hispaniola. It was considered the wealthiest colony in the world because of sugar, coffee, and indigo production. That wealth came almost entirely from enslaved labor. Around 1789, Saint Domingue had roughly 500,000 enslaved Africans to about 32,000 whites.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's not even like a fifth.
No.
Now, there was also about 24,000 free people of color in the area at the time. But the enslaved people vastly outnumbered whites, and the sugar conditions were horrific. They had extremely high mortality rates, long labor days, frequent beating and punishments, massive importation of enslaved Africans because people died so quickly that they just had to keep pushing, that they just had to keep importing more labor for themselves because their slaves were literally dying off.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Now, Louisiana sugar plantations would later develop very similar. So that's why I bring up the Haiti Uprising.
Okay.
On the night of August 21st to the 22nd, 1791, enslaved people in the northern Saint Dominique launched coordinated attacks. They burned plantation. Owners were either killed or had fled. The uprising spread rapidly, and thousands ended up joining into it.
Thousands?
Thousands.
Wow.
The most famous leader of this revolution was Toussaint Louverture. He was born enslaved, later freed, and emerged as a military and political leader during the revolution. He helped organize forces, defeat enemies, negotiate internationally, and eventually controlled much of the colony. But he wasn't alone. Other major figures included Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Henry Christophe, and Alexandre Pétain. France did abolish slavery in its colonies in 1794, partly because the revolt had become impossible to suppress. But later, Napoleon Bonaparte tried to reassert control and restore the old colonial system. Now, he sent troops under General Leclerc, and they were able to capture and deport Toussaint back to France, where he died in prison in 1803, but the revolution continued. The French army had faced fierce resistance, guerrilla warfare, and even yellow fever epidemics. The disease itself alone devastated French forces, because yellow fever had been circulating in the Caribbean and had roots connected to West African disease environments. Many African-born people or locally born people of the African descent had likely been exposed to it already, and that meant that they could build up like an immunity to it.
I was about to say they already had like a tolerance to it, essentially.
Exactly. Yep. But the French soldiers,
no, it's new.
Nothing.
Yeah.
They never encountered it before, so historians kind of refer to them as immunologically naive.
Which makes sense.
Exactly. The French often stayed in coastal lowlands, ports, swamps, and mosquito-heavy areas where these mosquitoes thrived. Haitian forces frequently moved through the mountains and interior regions, so it wasn't only biology, it was also where the troops were located. Like I said, the French were really more where these mosquitoes were at.
Yeah.
And the Haitian forces they typically stayed higher up where there weren't as many.
Yeah.
The disease hit the French expedition incredibly hard. Tens of thousands may have died from the disease during the campaign, and yellow fever arguably killed more French troops than combat did.
Really?
General Leclerc himself died of yellow fever in 1802.
Wow.
On January 1st, 1804, Haiti declared independence under Dessalines, and Haiti became the first Black republic, the first nation created by formerly enslaved people, and one of the few successful slave revolutions in history.
Wow.
Now, this alone caused fear to spread throughout Louisiana. Newspapers warned of conspiracy, planters armed themselves, and militias expanded, but conditions kept worsening. The success of the Haitian Revolution sent shockwaves far beyond Saint Domingue. To enslaved people throughout the Americas, Haiti represented possibility, a proof that slavery was not unbreakable and that those that were forced into bondage could resist, organize, and even overthrow colonial power. To slaveholders, however, Haiti became a nightmare made real. The news of burned plantations, armed uprisings, and the collapse of one of the world's richest sugar colonies spread throughout ports, trade routes, and refugee communities, eventually reaching Louisiana. Yet, rather than softening the institution of slavery or making it so that maybe the slaves didn't want to create an uprising, Louisiana moved deeper into it. As sugar production expanded along the Mississippi River after the Louisiana Purchase, plantation owners invested heavily in land, mills, and enslaved labor. The result was the rise of a brutal sugar empire where profit depended upon relentless labor, extreme discipline, and a system so physically destructive that many historians consider Louisiana sugar slavery among the harshest forms of slavery in North America. The same crop that had fueled wealth and revolution in Haiti would now help create the conditions that led to the German Coast Uprising of 1811. Now, the reason historians say that it was one of the most brutal labor systems is because sugar was physically demanding in ways that are difficult to overstate. So, the labor itself obviously came from enslaved people whose bodies basically became the machinery driving one of the most profitable industries in the early U.S. Sugar transformed Louisiana during the late 18th and early 19th century, and plantation owners invested because the profits were enormous. The expansion accelerated, like I said, after the Louisiana Purchase, as American influence and agricultural investment increased. Vast plantations appeared all along the Mississippi River corridor, but particularly in the areas surrounding the German coast. Beneath this prosperity, however, existed an economic system built on this relentless labor. And like I said before, unlike cotton, sugar could not wait. Once sugarcane was harvested, time became the enemy. Cane deteriorated rapidly after cutting, which forced plantation systems into an almost continuous cycle of labor. Workers would plant the sugarcane, then they would maintain the fields, they would harvest the crops, they would transport the stalks, they would operate the crushing mills, boil the juice, refine the sugar, prepare the shipments under strict time demands, and any delay risked an economic loss, and that urgency ended up shaping everything. Harvest season, often called the grinding season, became infamous among enslaved workers.
You know, I've never thought about the fact of the process of sugar and just how complicated it is.
Right. And when a lot of the times when we talk about slavery, we talk about cotton.
It's usually the first thing you think of. Yes.
But I didn't, that's why I was like, shit, when I was reading about this, because I didn't even know about this. And we do get into why, because it was 100% tried to kind of brush under the rug type of situation. But it is crazy. And it makes sense how cotton you could extend the time frame.
Yeah.
Because it's not a deteriorating thing.
No.
Necessarily. But during these periods, plantations operated almost continuously. This was during the harvest season.
Mm-hmm.
Historical accounts describe labor extending well beyond daylight hours, and work frequently continued through the night as mills processed incoming cane. Some historians would also describe the labor days as extending between 18 to 20 hours with only brief periods of rest.
20 hours?
20 hours. And this was every day.
Yeah, all day, every day.
All day, every day. So their sleep became fragmented. Workers would sometimes work in the fields, cutting the cane before even moving into the processing operations. And so for them, the exhaustion became normal. But the thing with exhaustion, too, is you're more likely to make mistakes.
Yes.
And so as the sugar labor literally consumed their bodies through exhaustion, the physical act of harvesting the cane itself was dangerous. Workers would cut thick stalks using heavy blades similar to like a machete or cane knives. And cane leaves themselves contain sharp silica edges, which are capable of slicing exposed skin. So if you're already exhausted and then you're doing this, you're gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
Historical descriptions repeatedly mention cut hands, scarred arms, wounded legs, and chronic infections, because workers often stood for extended periods in wet, muddy fields under the intense heat and humidity of Louisiana. And they wouldn't get care for their wounds.
Yeah.
They would just be sent back to work, so that's gonna get infected.
Yeah.
A lot of their minor injuries became major threats, and it was also before antibiotics too, so the infection would spread quickly. A deep cut could become disabling, and a fever itself could even become fatal during this time. The danger only increased after the harvest reached the mills. The sugar crushing equipment represented some of the most hazardous machinery on plantations. Rollers powered by animals or mechanical systems crushed the cane stalks to extract juice. And the workers feeding the stalks into the machines operated under an immense pressure to maintain production speed. Workers feeding stalks into the machines operated under immense pressure to maintain production speed. And this brought on horrific accidents like hands being trapped in rollers, fingers being crushed, arms mangled, and entire bodies pulled into the machinery.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There was also even burns from boiling sugar kettles and boiler explosions.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. That's... Ew.
Yeah, and I mean, think about it. If you're dealing with boiling sugar and you get some of that on you...
Oh, it's gonna be like hot lava and melt your skin.
Yeah, and it doesn't come off.
Yep.
So then, and once again, they weren't really treated. It was just kind of wrapped up and you were sent back to work.
Yeah.
I literally have it right here. Is I put in a note saying, meaning injured workers received limited relief and would often be forced to go back to work with severe injuries. So it's just, I got ahead of myself that time. Now, unlike many other parts of the American South where enslaved populations naturally increased, Louisiana sugar parishes often experienced population decline because the deaths exceeded the births.
Oh my goodness.
Which is insane to think about. This was often linked to exhausting labor, the disease, injuries, and overwork. One formerly enslaved person recalled, quote, "It was a rare thing if a man lived for more than 10 to 12 years of one of those who worked at the mill."
10 years?
10 years.
Wow.
Historical research notes that Louisiana sugar planters continuously purchased additional enslaved laborers, particularly young men, because mortality and physical destruction outpaced the population growth. Some plantations became heavily male because replacement labor focused on the field strength.
Yeah.
So they were just trying to replace, instead of like taking care of their slaves, which is just a fuck statement to say, but
yeah,
instead of doing that, they were just looking to replace them because they knew that they were gonna die.
Yeah.
And even though it was heavily male labor force, the women in the sugar regions weren't any better off. They would often experience intense workloads, and some historians even argue that the labor conditions contributed to miscarriages, poor health, and therefore reduced the population.
Which makes sense.
Of course. Frederick Douglass referred to Louisiana sugar country as a, quote, life of living death. And modern scholarship still uses that phrase when discussing the cane labor conditions.
That sounds about right.
Now, beyond the mills stood the boiling houses. These structures became centers of heat, noise, steam, and exhaustion. Cane juice moved through large kettles and boiling vats where workers monitored the temperatures, transferred the liquids through multiple stages of refinement. Fires burned constantly beneath cauldrons. The temperatures became extreme and steam even filled enclosed spaces. Workers were also carrying heavy materials while being surrounded by boiling sugar.
Essentially hot lava.
Literally.
The equivalent.
Burns occurred frequently, heat exhaustion became common, the boiling houses only represented another layer of danger within a labor system already saturated with risk. Historian Richard Follett and other scholars have pointed out that Louisiana sugar production differed from other agricultural systems because the entire process demanded speed and synchronization. Cotton labor remained brutal, but often allowed for more flexibility in processing schedules, and sugar offered little such luxuries. The crop controlled the worker, and when the cane was ready, labor intensified. Everything else became secondary, and this included health. Mortality rates on sugar plantation frequently exceeded those in other agricultural regions. And historians have even argued that sugar systems effectively consumed labor at unsustainable rates. Enslaved workers would age rapidly under the constant physical demands. Planners often viewed this reality as an economical one. Enslaved people existed simultaneously as laborers and financial assets to them. Records reveal calculations concerning purchase prices, productivity, and replacement costs.
I realize you all can't see my face at the moment, but
yeah, that was me when you were talking about the Lalaurie mansion, where I was just like silent, and then I was like, "Shit, I gotta say something."
Greed, essentially greed.
To them, human life became like a form of accounting.
Yes.
If labor destroyed workers faster than they could recover, replacement remained the only option.
Yeah.
Domestic slave trade in earlier Atlantic systems provided labor sources for them. And so it just created a cycle.
Yeah.
And even though the Louisiana sugar system did give the planters extraordinary wealth, I mean, they were just reaping the benefits of this.
Oh, I'm sure they were very rich. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. The same system produced literal deaths in the slaves.
Yeah.
So it's like, for them, it was literally just like, we'll just get a replacement.
We'll just replace them.
It's so fucked to think about.
That you know, to replace a human being.
Right.
Because you want to keep your pockets full.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now remember, only 7 years earlier, the enslaved people in Saint Dominique had overthrown one of the wealthiest sugar colonies in the world. The Louisiana planters had watched the plantations burn, colonial authority collapse, and the formerly enslaved people create an independent nation. Refugees even arrived in Louisiana carrying stories of revolution, violence, and upheaval. So to slaveholders, Haiti was not history, it was a warning. As Louisiana expanded its own sugar empire, many feared the same conditions that fueled the revolution in Haiti were now developing along the Mississippi River, and it was.
I was about to say it was.
They literally, instead of doing anything about it after they watched Haiti, they just leaned harder into it.
Yeah.
Now, at the center of the uprising stood Charles Deslan, one of the least documented yet most significant figures in history of the resistance to slavery in the United States. Much of his life does remain a little bit uncertain. Historians believe he may have originated in Saint Dominique during the Haitian period, although it is a little bit debated. But this is also what I believe to be true, because of a couple things. One, Charles Deslan was likely born around 1789. And records from the Deslan family estate in Saint Dominique does describe a young enslaved person named Charles, which kind of strengthens the Haiti connection. Because after this, the Deslan family reportedly fled Haiti after the revolution and brought enslaved people, including Charles, to Louisiana. But some people do argue that he was Louisiana born. But I'm like, we have kind of a Deslan family who lived in Saint Dominique, who moved eventually to Louisiana, who had a young man named Charles there that was born around the same time. It just makes more sense to me, at least.
Yeah.
But Charles, when he worked on Colonel Manuel Andrews' plantation, he worked as a slave driver, which was like the overseer of the enslaved workers. And Andre had about 86 people working in his plantation. Now, drivers did occupy a unique role because while they remained enslaved, they did have greater movement and knowledge of plantation operations, which a lot of people believe that this gave Charles the ability to travel, communicate, recruit, and organize kind of more secretly because he knew the inner workings of the plantation.
Yeah.
By January of 1811, the tensions that had been building across Louisiana sugar plantations were approaching a breaking point. The brutal realities of sugar slavery, the lingering shadow of Haiti, and the growing fear among plantation owners existed alongside the increasing desperation among many of the enslaved people. Now, positioned as a driver on Manuel Andre's plantation, like I said, he possessed the knowledge of all the operations.
Yes.
He also had access to workers and the ability to move between groups in ways that many others could not. Evidence suggests that the uprising had not been conceived in a single moment of anger, but had been planned and discussed beforehand. Communication appears to have been extended beyond a single plantation, with participants later joining the march from neighboring estates. On the evening of January 8th, 1811, planning gave way to action. On the Andre plantation along the German coast, the revolt began. Now, the uprising moved quickly and deliberately. The first known actions of the evening on January 8th happened on Colonel Manuel Andre's plantation. Manuel Andre was the plantation owner where Charles Deslan had lived and worked, making him both practical and symbolic for the first target. Colonel Manuel Andre was a wealthy Louisiana planter on the German coast. He also held local influence and militia connections as a planter and former military officer. Historians cannot prove exact motives because enslaved participants left few records, but several reasons are kind of more likely that Charles lived and worked there, so he already knew the layout, he knew where weapons were, schedules, routes. He knew the enslaved workers already, and he knew where the weak points were at. Now, this plantation also provided an initial group of rebels. The beginning there allowed them to gather people quickly before moving outward. Andre was the person exercising direct control over their lives. Removing him weakened local plantation leadership. And for the symbolic aspect, it represented more than just killing a plantation owner because it struck the plantation system, slave authority, sugar wealth, and white control overall. During the attack, rebels entered the house while Manuel Andre and his son Gilbert were inside. Andre later wrote that he was attacked with an axe blow and badly wounded but escaped, but his son Gilbert Andre was killed during the attack. Now, I couldn't find any exact description for how he was attacked, but some accounts think that it was like with a tool or an axe of some kind.
That would probably make the most sense.
Yeah, especially I'll get into it, the type of weapons I guess they were able to grab.
Yeah.
But now after this, rebels reportedly opened storage areas and seized weapons, as well as ammunition and some supplies before leaving. After surviving the attack, Manuel Andre wrote, quote, "An attempt was made to assassinate me by the stroke of an axe. My poor son has been ferociously murdered," end quote. Now, this is one of the closest surviving descriptions of the opening moments at the plantation. The rebels would continue on to grab whatever weapons they could find. This included axes, cane knives, hoes, clubs, a small number of firearms, and ammunition. But most of the rebels were not heavily armed, so they just carried what they would already use in sugar production, which is also pretty symbolic.
The irony.
Yeah, exactly. Now, they had cane knives. These were long, heavy cutting blades used to harvest sugar cane. And depending on the style, they could resemble either a machete, a billhook, or even a short sword. The cane hooks were also used for clearing and cutting, and this was kind of like a half knife or a half hook, which was like, I kind of picture like a scythe.
Oh,
it was good for like pulling vegetation.
Okay. I gotcha.
Sugar processing sometimes used wooden beaters and crushing implements around the mills, so those type of tools would become clubs. Boiling houses had long-handled tools to skim impurities from the cane juice, and those large paddles, skimmers, or stirring implements would also become like a type of club for them. There were also a lot of plantation hoe heads that were heavy iron, and some of the workers even sharpened the edges on them or just straight up used them as impact weapons. There were also the axes, which were everyday plantation tools.
Yeah.
Wooden yokes or poles. Now, typically they were used for carrying loads and transport, but they used them as like a staff or a pole weapon. The boiling houses had fire tools like pokers, hooks, ash tools, and furnace implements that were all heavy iron. They also had the animal driving tools, which were whips used around livestock and transport equipment, pestle and cane crushing implements that were used, like, they were more like the hand processing tools before the large mill operations came in. Now, armed heavily with the tools of their own labor, the rebels transformed the plantation itself into their source of resistance. Knives, axe, hoes, clubs, and other implements once used to plant, cut, process, and profit from the sugar production now served an entirely different purpose. Yet the attack on the Andre plantation was never intended to be the final objective. After the confrontation that left Emmanuel Andre wounded and Gilbert Andre dead, the rebels gathered weapons, supplies, and additional participants before moving beyond the plantation boundaries. Rather than remaining in place, they began marching from estate to estate along the German coast, recruiting enslaved workers, expanding their numbers, and carrying the uprising towards New Orleans, stopping at plantations as they went. Their numbers grew as additional slave workers joined the march, and witnesses later described them moving in columns with drums, flags, and organized ranks, which deeply alarmed planners because it looked less like a scattered escape and more like a mobilized force. As they advanced, plantation property was attacked, buildings and crops were damaged or burned in some locations, and one of the better-known deaths during the march was Francois Trepanier, who was reportedly killed after encountering the rebels. Contemporary accounts indicate that he was also struck with plantation tools, most likely an axe. Then the violence shifted. So news spread rapidly after Manuel Andre escaped and warned the neighboring plantations.
Oh.
And reports now circulated that armed enslaved workers were moving plantation to plantation, recruiting participants, increasing in their numbers, and moving towards New Orleans. Planters fled, militia units formed, armed men, cavalry, and territorial forces began moving against the rebels. And this is where I'm going to end for part 1.
Woo!
Because that was already a lot.
Yes.
And it was pretty heavy. But after this, we're going to move into, like, the uprising itself. We'll get to how it ended and, like, some of the rebels' deaths. And how it was brushed under the rug.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So that next part is going to come out this coming Thursday. So keep an ear out for that, guys.
I will say for this just being a part 1, quite crazy.
Yes. It's sad to know how much we don't know.
Yeah, because I've never heard of this before at all.
Right.
Like, this is all new to me.
100%. And there's reasons, like, we get into that. But it is crazy. Like, and that's one of the reasons I really do enjoy doing the podcast. Is because, like, there's so much stuff that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. Like, how, and I mean, because we're in the U.S., we primarily focus on stuff that the U.S. did. So it's like, I didn't know, and, like, it is true, like, history is told by those with wealth. So a lot of the stuff that did happen, if they didn't want it to be known, it's not in our history book.
Fair enough point.
We're gonna get shadow banned.
Yeah, this episode definitely.
So if you are listening to it, share it with your mother.
Share it with your mother. Oh, well, thanks for listening in, guys. Catch us Thursday, like we said. But don't go too far, because we'll catch you in the next episode. We'll catch you... No, I said it wrong. No. So don't go too far, because we'll catch you in the next investigation. Bye.
Bye.
I could have said episode, but I was like, no, that's not what I do.
That blanket.
Back feet doll.
I know. He's making biscuits. A single mom who works too hard, loves the kids and never stops. He's making biscuits.
Yes. I mean, back feet doll. He's not even just doing. No. He's not even doing like just the front. He's doing his back feet even like just.
He's getting it.